contact information at the end of this, as well as a PowerPoint that I am failing to bring up to share with you. Regarding the SPED services, I just want to I did an overall look and PowerPoint that I prepared because so many of the questions kind of went into one another, is that during this time that schools are shut down, they're shut down. And there are no services. Any schools that begin to share services with their general population, any enrichment opportunities, virtual learning resources, all of that has to be offered to everybody at the same time. The key is that the schools are closed. They're sharing enrichment opportunities. They're not sharing actual academic curriculum. They have created packets. They put things on different websites to allow you if you want to do it, but nobody's being graded. There's no testing going on. And that's a way in which the DOE doesn't really have to address the issues with students that have SPED services in school, because school is not open. And Christine Nishimoto did send out a memo to everyone saying that would kind of be the case until the schools reopen. And once they do, then IEP teams, 504 teams, they'll probably have to get together to check and see whether or not compensatory services are going to be needed due to lack of skills, loss of skills, regression, whether that be addressed with compensatory or ESY. We're all kind of waiting some guidance on that. And the other thing I found, I just wanted to relay, is that there's lots of information out there. I'm trying to just steer with official websites such as the U.S. Department of Education, other states' Department of Education. Many other states have much more information available at this time. I think that Hawaii is still kind of ramping up as to posting any frequently asked questions and giving that guidance. But under the IDEA, Section 504, Title II of the ADA, there is no requirement to provide services when schools are closed due to extenuating circumstances, an act of God, in this case, the COVID ID. And I'm going to kind of let somebody else share and then come back in and see if there's more that I can add to that.
Does anyone else have something to add to that?
This is Pat Morrissey. Even if there is nothing in the IDEA specifically or 504, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, kids with disabilities should be able to have access to the same services with accommodations if necessary as anybody else. So that's baloney if somebody's telling you that's the case.
So I didn't say that they're not, but if any of the general school population is being offered educational opportunities, then that has to be offered to all.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And I'm sorry if I was unclear on that. That is absolutely the case. The piece that's missing is that it's what's being offered is not our traditional educational curriculum. So that's kind of coming and changing and being made available as we all work through this.
Right, right. But the point is, for example, if children without disabilities are allowed in high school online instruction in classes, then that option with accommodation, for example, accessibility with regard to technology, should be offered to kids with disabilities.
Anything that's being offered to the general educational, the general students, has to be offered to all. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Whatever they're being offered, they have to do it with the accommodations to the greatest extent possible. There's always that greatest extent possible.
Yes.
Now, another area is that students with an IDEA and with an IEP that are receiving related services, those related services such as speech therapy, OT, PT that would be otherwise offered in school can be offered on a case-by-case basis during this time.
And Lydia, what are the criteria for that? How is it decided which cases receive those services and which don't?
I sought guidance on that, and again, right now it's on a case-by-case basis because we're in such a new realm. And I think that, I think looking at the U.S. Department of Education website and the memos that have been released, is that they are looking at this as something that's evolving, and that they are working through guidelines in order to see how this kind, how they're going to be able to work this in, and everybody kind of seeing that the whole landscape is how we address education may be changing as we go forward. And
Okay.
guidance provided on that. I did also see that some states, because under the IDEA, there is an allowance that states can provide, that they can change, given, is it like a 60-day timeline? Pat, if you want to weigh in this, for evaluations, new evaluations, some states are being able to change this opportunity as a way to change that from 60 days to 90 days, such as Tennessee. And so those are the kinds of latitudes that states do have, and not anything that we can really do to prevent that. Legally, we're looking at it, and it's all kind of, again, going as we go forward. But on that case-by-case basis, contact your SSC and make the request and ask to have that, somehow be built in during this time.
Okay, and we have a related question that someone's typed into chat that says, so just a clarification, if distance learning is being offered to all students at one school, then a student with an IEP from that school must be given that same opportunity, correct?
Correct. And again, what they're using the language is that this is an enrichment opportunity. They are issuing things like iReady and, for reading, for math, but also along that, they're also go to Khan Academy and all these other different virtual resources. So Pat, please correct me, but my understanding is that these, again, are not really traditional educational services that are being offered. It's enrichment opportunities. How much you want? I was waiting for this PowerPoint. Go ahead, Pat.
I don't want this enrichment category of topics to be an excuse to give kids with disabilities less. I don't know whether that's a federal position on enrichment or not. I haven't seen that term extensively used. My feeling is that obviously, if a lot of things, regardless of what's offered, is being offered to kids generally, then kids with disabilities should have access. Now back to OT and PT. Professionals are going to have to justify their existence during this time as well. So from the fact that they've now adopted a policy of encouraging telemedicine, there's no reason why, if a parent has internet and access to a laptop, that an OT or PT couldn't arrange a meeting via video using Zoom or something, FaceTime, to work with a parent to do something with a kid, or to provide that family with some activities they could do independently without Zoom. So we shouldn't let them off the hook completely.
No, who was that was just speaking? Was that Pat?
Yes.
Hi, Pat. Yeah, absolutely. Some things are easier to do via Zoom or whatever platform you're using, such as speech therapy. But again, just Pat has it on the money, and it's something that's considered on a case-by-case basis. And again, contact your SSC.
We have a question related to that. It says, what if students with disabilities cannot access those enrichment opportunities without support? I mean, if they don't have the capabilities to do that online, are there other opportunities, or is it just sort of, this is the best we can do right now?
I don't know if anybody else wants to answer. I don't want to be taking all the time here, but I can answer that if nobody else wants to step up.
I think the smartest move for parents to make is to decide what is available through their home, and to make a list of things that they would like to have for their child, and to have a conversation with somebody at the school as to find out how many of these things can happen. I mean, like you said, it's a case-by-case situation, but if you don't write down what you think would work and talk to somebody about it, it's not going to happen.
Amanda?
Hi, good morning. I'm sorry I had audio issues earlier. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. I just wanted to share for my son, Ikaika, he's a high schooler. He is in primarily an inclusion setting, but he does have some resource room. And we're at Kalaheo on the windward side of Oahu, and they've been sending stuff actually coming from lots of different directions through Jupiter Ed and Gmail and Google Classroom. So the classes that he is in general ed, the teachers are having open office hours. So he actually had a video chat this morning with his teacher. She had posted a lesson online. They are telling us that these are enrichment lessons. They are not being graded for them. They can't force the kids to do them, and not all of the kids are doing them. So you can't give a grade to some and not others. But we're doing it just to keep him busy and active. This morning he was online with his algebra teacher, who is a special ed teacher, and he actually went through the lessons with him. They were able to do it online through Zoom, sharing screens, working. I actually had to send him to his room because they were chatting while we were chatting. And the aides that work with him in each of his classrooms, because he does have a classroom aide for support, they are also doing office hours and are available through Zoom and other chat forums, video-wise, so that he can get assistance with the work that is being assigned to him through the enrichment opportunities. So I know we're working closely with our school. We're working with our aides that work with the kids in the after-school program. And we have gotten information from our SPED teacher, and she's asked us to let us know if Ikaika needs additional supports and what those look like, because they don't know, how we're going to access things or how things are going to look. So I would definitely say reach out to your care coordinators, reach out to your SPED teachers. Some parents are getting packets from their SPED teachers, whether that's virtual or being sent home in the mail. So I'd say just reach out to them and see what they can provide. And if you're looking for, hey, my kid's speech therapy, I'd reach out to the speech therapist or the care coordinator or the SSC and say, hey, can we set up a telehealth kind of an opportunity? I'd be proactive with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda.
And I would agree with that. And again, this is not a formal traditional educational curriculum that's being offered. They're kind of being able to get around that by these enrichment opportunities, exactly as Amanda was saying. I did want to kind of backtrack and address like those that do not have Zoom or computer access at home. There are educational packets, again, I hate to use education. I don't want to confuse on regular academic curriculum versus these enrichment opportunities, allowing the students and the parents at home to figure out what it is and where the student is at as far as any of the virtual learning. But all those are all being made available and being shot out to everybody. But again, under the IDEA, it is not they're kind of being able to get around that right now while we figure this out, as these are considered, and I keep on using that term, enrichment opportunities, whether it be for learning, speech therapy, OT, PT. And exactly as Amanda said, reach out to your SSC. And if your teachers are making themselves available, reach out to them as well. And I think all the teachers are in and making themselves available as much as they can.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question, and that is, does compensatory education apply to this situation? Does anyone have an answer for that about compensatory funding?
I'd make the same comment that I made about IDEA and 504, that if compensatory education is being offered to kids generally, it should be offered to kids with disabilities.
Okay, thank you. The next question is about how is DOE getting information to parents? Annie from the State Department of Education gave me a bunch of links that I will email to you after this is over, so that you have those. I'll post them on our Facebook site as well, but there are probably 6 different links of places to get education depending on the topic that you're wanting to do. It says, how are all of the educational assistants and teachers who are being paid being utilized? So we've touched on this a little bit, but I know that people who had a one-on-one aide or something like that, what is the job of those people right now is the question. Is there anybody who can answer that one?
So again, under the current circumstances, due to the COVID-ID pandemic, that piece is a little difficult to put into place as to who's all available, right? Lots of people are not available to fulfill those roles. And the schools are not mandated because the schools are closed versus a break, formal break that's the calendar. So this puts us into a different realm. And again, on a case-by-case basis, what can be offered by the individual schools. Now on the IEPs and the 504s for compensatory education, what they're indicating from the U.S. Department of Education and down through the schools is that once school resumes, then the teams need to get together and evaluate for loss of skills, regression, if you will, and to be able to offer then at that time compensatory education, may it be in the form of extended increased ESY or exact compensatory education. That'll all be determined again as they meet. On the IEPs and to the Section 504, they are mandated to maintain those annual meetings that they are to meet, even though we're not in the schools. They are to meet that deadline, your annual deadline for an IEP to meet. So IEP meetings and such should be getting scheduled as we speak.
And all service providers should be attending those IEP meetings, correct? OT, PT, speech.
And allowance, yes. Whoever's on that team that can, the usual IEP, it's supposed to be exactly like a usual IEP meeting, but it's going to probably be done via Zoom. Now,
Right.
Those that cannot do that, then allowance will have to be made for a different way. Whether it be going to the school and use their computer to check in with all the different providers. But yes, those deadlines, annual deadlines, are to be kept.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I see you asking a question. Just unmute. Let's see. Okay, Olympia.
Hi, I'm Olympia. I have 2 autistic kids, but I actually have 3 SPED kids because I have one with dyslexia too. And I'm on the North Shore and Holly Eva. They've all done more than what most of y'all have been reporting. So I do have lesson plans for them. But I did have an IEP meeting scheduled for today. And I went to the school to pick up the paperwork from the speech therapist, the OT therapist, like their reports. But the SSC was asking me, and this is the question that I kind of have, is should we close it out? So what does that mean when he's asking me to close out the IEP, just so that they can close it out and then reassess again with behaviors or regressions? Is that why they're asking me to close it out? Because I was nervous on what to say. So I told him after I had this meeting, I would get back to them because I didn't really understand. But it's his 3-year eval. So I'm still waiting for paperwork from like the school psychologist and things like that. But they're trying to close it out. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, remember, at IEP meeting, they have to keep that annual deadline or 3-year, the 3 years kind of something that goes up and can be debated, but they have to keep those deadlines. If they're trying to close it out, that just means, yes, but remember, an IEP can be called at any time. So once school resumes, if you close out your IEP now, that's fine. Once school resumes, then your team has got to get together and evaluate with how long is this going to last, how many skills have been lost, has there been regression, and that's when the discussion will be looking at potential for compensatory. And again, it could be ESY or straight compensatory education. Does that help, Olympia?
Yes, and he did say those exact words, those, because that was a new term for me because I'd never heard of that other term before. I've only known ESY. So yeah, and that's exactly what he explained. So I just wanted to make sure that we're still on, because I've worked so hard on these IEPs. I have 3 kids and it's been a lot. So I just want to make sure we're doing the right thing. So perfect. Thank you.
I imagine, yeah.
Kieli, did you have something to add?
I would be careful about closing out. Closing out means it's going to be an end of a timeline. So I would personally have a discussion with the team about what that means with regards to your evaluation timeline and what occurred already. So you shared that you saw some evals, but you haven't seen all the evals. So to agree to close out a timeline means you're agreeing at that point that everything that was done and you're excusing the things that weren't done. So I would be careful with that. I think everybody's really clear about the current situation that timelines may or may not be met, although those timelines still are in play. Like nobody's excused the 60-day timelines. And ask their team if there's other options for your team to meet and go over the evals. I think everybody just needs to be a little flexible right now. And if that means letting the timeline run, I mean, it's not something we can help, you know, but your team can still complete the evals and get them to you. You can still review the ones that should have been done can still be given to you, so you have the opportunity
Yep, I
to
have
review
those.
them.
They gave
And
me those
so,
printed copies. Yep.
okay, but you haven't had the discussion with or review with the team. So that's the part that I wouldn't say, okay, I'm good with it, I'm done. I would hold on and ask the team for options on how you guys could go over them, like what would be the best thing, and put it to the team, and then be flexible about how you come to an agreement about that. But closing it out, I just wouldn't just
That's
do
why
that.
I didn't understand that term. It was really throwing me off, and I was just like,
Yeah.
well, let me get back to you, because I didn't
No,
want
I
to.
would, and I would put it to the team. I would put it to your admin. I would put it to the SSC. I would put it to the SPED teacher, and offer ideas for how you can address, you know, completing the timeline and asking questions of the people who evaluated your son, and then make that decision together as a
And
team.
then
You know,
how do we evaluate our kids at home on behaviors? Like, we have to write down, like, in a journal, like, what's the best way to give that to the school for any regressions or behaviors that we notice? Like, do we document it, like, on a, how do we document that to give it to our three teachers regarding their behaviors or regression?
I'm just going to say this as a parent. This is just my opinion as a parent. I think this is a really good time for us to be in situations that we never thought we were going to be in. Like, I really never thought I was going to be homeschooling my non-vocal daughter. But we're here. And so I think this is a really good opportunity to review your IEP and challenge yourself and say, like, what are they able to do? What are they not able to do? And have better data. However you want to take that data, if you're comfortable taking, you know, the tick marks and making things up for yourself. If you want to ask your teacher if they can share some blank data sheets, or if you have an ABA provider with you, just ask them for, you know, blank stuff, or if they can tweak things for you. But I think this is a really good opportunity for all of us to look at skills we may not have been doing or working on, you know, as intensively as we can now, because we have them all day. So I think this is
one of them learned how to tie their shoes. So again, I've never had time to do that. We're always rushing out the door. So one learned how to tie their shoes. So again, we're doing independent tasks. We're doing an ABA list. You know, they have to check off and everything like that.
But this is going to be really good information for you to go back and share with your IEP teams when the time comes. To really, you know, get focused on functional skills and independent living skills, and the things that, you know we need to work on, but now we can work on them all day.
I will throw in too, I'm a parent as well, but I also taught special education for 20 years. And if you're keeping data at home, the most important thing to try to do, if you can, anecdotal notes and journaling is great, but it's better if it's measurable data. So if you have one specific behavior that they're working on, or one specific, my child, attending to a task for longer than 3 minutes, whatever it is, check marks, tally marks, so that you can say, look, it's 10, it's 9, it's 8. So you can show regression, or you can show progression, so that you can say this happened, this happened. Hard data like that is what is going to be the most helpful to you when you go back. All right, let's move on to the next.
I just want to just come in with a comment that so much of what I am sharing is in general, because as you know, the IEP process is highly individualized. So kind of trying to answer a question for Emily, I think Ely's got some really great points, is that it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. You have to take a look as to what's going on with your child and what's happening. The other piece of the data, I completely agree. Look at the current goals in the IEP and use this as an opportunity to see if these are really valid, if there's something else that you see that you want to try and change. If it's outside of the IEP, it might be a little bit more difficult to show the regression or loss of skills, because they will be looking at the current IEP. But absolutely keep that data as well as you can. If you do have an RBT that you can turn to with that, they're really good about showing you how to do it. That would be, but getting that information and showing the regression, doing your baseline and showing what's happening on a day-by-day basis. You don't have to be doing data all day long. Just look at those goals and make sure you're measuring that, coming up with a system that's consistent.
Right, thank you. All right, our next question is about transition age students. And some parents would like to know what is being done for our older students who have transition services.
I'm going to kick to Cheryl.
Cheryl, if I'm not sure if you're speaking, but we can't hear you. You may be muted.
No, I had to find my unmute button, sorry.
Thank you.
So typically, we get called in, our VR counselors get called into the IEP teams. So what I would see is that the IEP team, we would be a part of that. And if there is an IEP meeting that's being held via virtual connection, Zoom, what have you, we would still be included in that process. One of the downfalls that we're finding and running into is that most of our services currently being provided to the DOE students that are enrolled are happening in the schools. We have classes in the schools. Therefore, the school's not in session. Those services are no longer available. We try to coordinate with our CRPs, our contracted providers, to hold some of these types of services off on their properties instead of in the schools. And that we had fallout with that. I had gotten feedback that some of the DOE teachers were encouraging the families not to allow their participants to attend those work readiness classes. So we're looking right now currently as we're evolving what the possibilities are for us to deliver via virtual. The challenges that we've identified is that not all special education families have internet access. They don't have the resources, the tools. And so we're just starting to embark on conversation and discussion at this point, identifying would it be possible for the DOE to provide these types of resources to the families? We don't know that. So we're looking at what kinds of creative ways we can come up with to deliver these transition services for our identified population of students getting ready to actually exit the DOE. Open for your feedback and any recommendations and suggestions that you may have for us to consider.
And I think that, Cheryl, you'll be a great resource to how that unfolds during this evolving time. I do see that what Hawaii is doing foremost is trying to address what's going on with their 9,000 some or 10,000 that are seniors that are going to be graduating. So I think they're trying to resolve that. You know, everything deserves a lot of thought, and because this might set the stage of how we do things going forward. So it is evolving. This, patience on that is advised, and taking advantage of anything that is being offered to you from the DOE. But the transition seems to kind of be down in lieu of what are they going to do about, again, they're kind of like trying to take all this on in some kind of sequence.
And exactly.
And that's what I'm seeing, so.
Yes, exactly right. And so it's difficult for us because we're the interface between the DOE and employers, it's difficult for us to ask employers to do things when they're cutting back, when they're actually laying off their staff and expecting their own staff to work remotely. So these are just all challenges that we're trying to interface with and be somewhat creative in our thinking and way that we're being able to address the needs.
Thank you. We have a lot of questions. Go ahead, Keely.
My question, that I asked that question specifically for the older individuals who are close to age out this year. If an organization or SEAC or DD Council is watching that for families where if the child was supposed to age out this year and they're missing instruction, missing time with regard to that transition to adulthood, if they would be able to recoup that time you know, I think for the guys that are real close to aging out, it's a significant amount of time to be mindful for them, that the DOE come up with a good plan for them, that they are able to get back, you know, the months that they've lost, to be able to transition well to adulthood. That was why I asked that question.
Was there a DOE response to that question as to where that's in the kind of pecking order of changes coming up?
Yeah, hang on.
Because again, that's something that's is going to have to be addressed once school resumes, to meet with your team. Even if they aged out during that time, they're going to have to meet to look at that criteria for possible compensatory education. And if that takes you back past 22, we would say you have to do that because it was lost. So that's an argument that I can't say we're going to win or not win at this point, everything, but I definitely would like to take a look at that as it goes forward.
I would, personally, I would prefer that it be less individualized and more of a blanket statement, so that it's not left up to the parents then to have to advocate. And, you know, there's a lot of families who aren't informed and who don't have access to information. And if rather than have it be on the onus of every team and every school and every parent making that decision, having it be, you know, a more blanket statement of, this is the time that was missed if these guys fall within, you know, age out of this period of time, that they are going to be able to recoup that time after, you know, if it extends past their 22nd birthday. I would like to see something like that for them, because I just think it's too difficult for families. I think too many people will fall through a gap in that scenario of missing education.
Let me read you what.
Oh, go ahead. Paula, go ahead.
Let me read you what the DOE, what the State Department said. The answer to that question was, the question, what is being done for our older students with transition services? And the answer is a waiver of any graduation requirements and course substitutions afforded to general education students must also be afforded to students with disabilities on track to graduate with a diploma. For students on a certificate track, IEP teams need to meet to determine any loss of skills as a result of the extended school closure and the child's need for compensatory education. This determination will be done on a case-by-case basis and include a review transition service.
This is Pat Marcy. This is Pat Marcy. I think the smart thing to do here is for us to write to the Department of Education. I think Daintree and Lou Erdercheck and I could write to the Department of Education and ask them what position they're going to take on this. I'm assuming that they could waive the 22-year age level for 1 year, so that would allow for schools to do things that make sense. And I think it won't be unique to Hawaii. It's going to be a national issue. And we might be able to encourage the rest of the networks with which we're connected to do the same thing. But you know what? It would be helpful if we could, if there are other issues like this that are big, that impact any or all students and any or all students in any state, then that gives us more additional things we could address in the same letter. So think about those.
Right.
And Daintree, I'm not at my desk, but could you send Paula a copy of the letter that we sent to the governor, so people will have a copy of that?
I sure will.
Thank you. We sent a letter to the governor on Saturday, basically saying how those of us in the Developmental Disabilities Network, which is the Center on Disability Studies, the DD Council, and the Hawaii Disability Rights Education Defense Fund Center, could help on their COVID-19 task force. And we identified some issues that have been raised by parents through our various conversations in that letter as well. So far, I've heard back from one person at a rather low level in the Department of Health.
Yeah, I think people the powers that be are hesitant to come out with any blanket statement because, again, things are evolving. and school is closed. So that does mean everything goes into abeyance. And once it does resume, again, I think that what Paula read from the DOE is just exactly what we've been saying, is that the teams will have to meet, even if past their age out date, determination for compensatory education. So going back on what discussion about how do we show that, again, that'll be really for those that are at home can show that by keeping data, that's great. But again, you know, a lot of this guidance, and everybody that's here today is kind of, I consider, probably on it and a good advocate for their child. And for those families that don't have that capacity in their homes to do that, that's where it's going to be, make sure that we reach out to those. But that will, you know, how we identifying them is kind of always the question. Yes, you need to identify, make sure that those meetings take place once school resumes.
Right. Our next set of questions was about extended school year. People wanted to know if the extended school year would be longer, you know, because of this extended absence from school. Are the requirements to qualify for extended school year the same as they would be if we were in a regular classroom situation? Can someone address those questions?
I don't think there's a firm answer to that, Paula, and all the participants. That again, I keep hate pushing it off to that you're going to have the IEP meetings. They have to keep those deadlines. You can start that discussion then if you have any hard data to show, but that is something that's all going to have to be worked out. And yes, it could be in the means of extended school year being expanded upon for a given period of time until they do get that back up, or compensatory education. Those are all possibilities and options that are going to be set before the IEP teams. And I do want to say is that, again, the direction from DOE, the U.S. Department of Education, is that this is not an opportunity to not be doing anything on the individual school boards or departments of education. They are to be getting, and you're hearing it, that they are meeting. They are working very hard to try and figure out how they're going to resolve this and get some guidance out. But under the IDEA, it's hard to do blanket statements when everything is just so different for every child.
Do we know if state testing is just being waived completely this year?
It is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. As of right now, it is. That's the memo that came out.
Okay.
Pat, did you hear anything to the difference on that since they issued that memo? Or say, you know, I'm going to take that back. There was a request in to be given that, to be given the leeway to have an abeyance on the state testing. I think it came back that yes, you're going to be able to because schools are closed. Can't do the testing while schools are closed.
We have a question in the chat that if my child was not approved for ESY previously, can that person request for ESY to be reevaluated for the summer because this is a different type of situation?
Absolutely. Yes.
Great. All right, I believe they've answered all of the questions you guys have sent in. Does anybody else have a question they'd like to ask?
I have a question. I hope I don't, you folks don't mind me jumping in, but is anyone aware of the Board of Education meeting that's happening this week on April 2nd and the DOE's proposal to waive graduation, diploma, and certificate requirements? The language in their document says on their agenda that it is up to the administrator to decide that. Now, I'm going to attend it via a webinar. I want to know, does that mean every administrator is going to go case by case? Because I have a serious problem with that if that's going to happen.
I think I don't want to confuse with the general guidance that's going to come from the DOE, Board of Education, versus how that translates to the individual IEPs or Section 504 plans.
Okay.
We do need that overall direction and what's going to be allowed, not allowed, to really get down to some of the details. So they kind of go hand in hand. I don't want to push everything to case by case. Again, we need that direction and what's going to be allowed under the current IDEA. The U.S. Department of Education has already indicated that they're looking at, and I don't want this to be an opportunity for them to remove and be watchful of this, to remove any of what's built into the current IDEA, but they are looking to how things may evolve going forward and how we provide education, whether it be general or via SPED services.
Okay, I just want to call it to people's attention because had my older son who had an IEP that graduated high school with a diploma, if it had been left up to an administrator to decide whether he got a diploma or not, he probably wouldn't have got it because he was a real pain in the rear end. You know what I mean? So I see where special ed students could be discriminated against. So I just want to call it to folks' attention. I found it embedded in a newsletter that I got from my local senator.
Debbie, if you want to share the link
Sure.
to that meeting in the chat, I'll include it in the email that goes out to everyone after this is over so people can watch that meeting if they'd like to.
Okay, I'll dig it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
And some of the questions that are being asked today require a legal interpretation as well. And so I'm an advocate for Hawaii disability advocate, but we do have our legal department. So I've been taking notes as to be able to see if they have any current guidance. If they do, then it'll be earmarked for something as we're all watching as to how things unfold. But yes, any discrimination issues that you see going on or denial of services you don't feel that should be happening, please contact us or the LDAH or whatever resources that you're reaching out into the community to take a look at that seriously.
Thank you.
I just, with regard to there's a lot of questions about taking data. And there was a question about asking the school. I think it's fine to ask the school for, documents and worksheets and whatnot, but I just want to remind parents that you're not a teacher. I'm not a teacher. I am a mother, and being home with my children doesn't mean I don't think this is even homeschooling. So this is very different from what homeschoolers say they do. And so please don't put pressure on yourself that you're going to achieve IEP goals. I just think this is such a great time for us to work on functional life skills and independent skills. And it's giving me a much better idea of where I need to get all my children to live collaboratively together, since we're constantly together. But we're just able to work on different things now. So use the time to do those things and don't put extra pressure on yourself to take data and be perfect and try to work things around your life that you can do. So that's all I want to say.
I agree with that, Ely. I hate to do this to you guys, but it is sometimes, when we come back together and have these IEP meetings when school resumes, unless you have some data to show, and it doesn't have to be really extensive data, that's why I said, look at the IEP, what are the goals, what do you want to, how are you going to be, measuring that? And then just stay with that to show what has been going on. Because they will say, once, I'm guessing, Pat, chime in, anybody else, that once you get back together, if we don't have that data available, the schools will say, well, we need time in order to get the data. And so I want to just try and stay away from that and encourage those that can. I agree with Kaili, don't put too much pressure on yourself, but those that can, do make up a simple sheet that you can just try and track every single day to see if progress is being met. And be happy to talk to you about individual, any of our advocates would be happy to talk to you about individual IEPs or Section 504 plans to help kind of devise that if you don't have an RBT to talk to or an EA.
I think going back in, once we get out of this, I think as soon as the schools are ready to schedule IEPs, that's going to be an important thing for me. And I've already had that conversation with my team that my expectation is to get back into an IEP meeting. With any time my daughters miss school or come back from any type of break, even though she has ESY, our entire team has gone through a revision of what she can and can't do. And so that would be my expectation to my team. Would be for them to go back through all of her goals and master targets and see what she can and can't do. So for me, that would be, I would be communicating that expectation to them that they're going to go back through and look at what she can and can't do. And again, for them to assess her, her skill level and regression, whatever recoupment that will have to happen. But I've never had, so far with this team, we've had that happen with the OT, PT, speech, and her ABA program. So I think it's really about communication and letting your team know what you're looking for now and going into the future. And having that conversation now is going to be helpful for them to plan as soon as we get out of this. And then that you're willing to work with them will help. I mean, imagine all the families that are, like us, expecting things. And the more you can communicate and be reasonable and ask them for support during this time, the more, and be clear about what that support you need is, it's easier for them to do it, right? If you're saying, hey, can I have help with this is what I'm working on, this is what I need help with, it's easier for them to give you the help you need. And so, or give you some kind of help, whether it's, you know, visiting you on a Zoom meeting or whatnot. But without that with that direction and that open communication, there's more likely that you can get support now and getting out of this in the, you know, in April, hopefully. So
I completely agree.
Thank you all. And I want to just take a minute just to thank the people who are panelists today and who agreed to come in and share their knowledge. This is a time that's sort of unprecedented. It's very fluid. Things are changing minute by minute. Decisions are having to be revamped. And these people are working very hard to help those of us with children who are affected by it. And so thank you for that. And I want to thank everybody for coming. I do want you to know that we've recorded this session. I will email you the recording of this once it downloads, and I will also be posted on our social media. All of the questions answered by the Department of Education, the State Department, I will also send you the state answers for those, as well as the link to the meeting, any other things that have come up during this session, I will send to you. I want you to know that Hawaii Autism Foundation has been doing these every Monday morning, and we plan to continue to do that. So if you would please like and follow us on social media, on Facebook, you'll know what the next ones are, and we hope that you'll be involved in that. In addition to these meetings, we're also going to be providing some online support groups for parents in different ways that you can be involved, and we can all be involved in supporting each other and advocating for our children. And so please follow us on social media or join our email list if you haven't, and we would love to be involved with you on that. So thank you again to everyone for joining us, and be well, and we hope to see you again soon.
Well, I just have a quick
Yeah, go Danger.
something. Hi, Danger Bartels here from the DD Council, and I just wanted to say that our sister agencies, which concludes the DD network, which is HDRC, and then CDS, the three of us, we also wanted to team up with Paula because of her outreach to everybody. So that's something that instead of doing our own and having 3 different places you guys could call into, we did collaborate and join a consortium with the autism. We also brought in SPIN and asked SPIN to join us and help us out, and SEAC. So we're trying to get more and more people here. So your panel of experts, you could just go to one place and we could answer questions rather than having a bunch of different Zooms. So I want you to know you guys are supported. If you guys know of anybody else who should join on in, we have Michelle Arakawa, who's on our DD Council from DOE as well. That's provided me with some technical support. And so from our DD Council, we have VR. So that's by Cheryl and folks. Allison, when we were talking to them. So anybody that you guys know of that you want to include to build our coalition a little bit, please let us know. And we're just going to use the Autism Foundation just because they're right there. They're doing a great job, and we really appreciate your facilitation and collaboration. Thank you so much, Paula. So just to let you guys know, please don't hesitate to say, hey, can you include this group as well? We're not trying to leave anybody out. We're just trying to build this up. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Daintry, and to everyone who's partnered with us, Taka and SPIN and the Disability Rights Center, and everyone who has helped us get the word out, because we all need to know this information. So it's great to be able to come together like this. One last thing, on Facebook, starting later today, there will be a poll that I'm putting out for topics, ideas for topics that we can do in these Monday meetings. So if you have something that you feel like you need questions answered, please let us know, and we'll try to find some experts who can help answer those questions. Okay? All right, everybody. Mahalo. Stay well.
Thanks.
Thanks.